fui buscar um livro. Este livro, partilho convosco, é dos que me acompanha mais na minha vida. Foi escrito em 1967, o ano em que eu nasci, mas só o descobri muito mais tarde. Ele estabelece e explica-nos um conjunto de mudanças que estavam já em curso na altura e que se tornaram proféticas, não num sentido religioso, mas num sentido que resulta da observação das transformações que estavam já a ocorrer na sociedade, muito dominada pelos média nos Estados Unidos da América. Eu estou à procura do apontador, que está aqui, para partilhar convosco as 7 mudanças que estavam a ser identificadas nesta altura, neste livro. A primeira era tu. A segunda, a tua família. A terceira, a tua vizinhança. A tua educação, o teu trabalho, o teu governo e a tua percepção dos outros. Uma das frases mais marcantes, não vos vou amassar com grandes detalhes, como é que isto nos leva à Wikipédia? Vão ver. Duas frases marcantes neste raciocínio. Há um mundo de diferenças entre o ambiente eletrónico que rodeia qualquer criança em casa e aquilo que a rodeia a si próprio, o seu ambiente escolar, herdado do século XIX, padronizado, segmentado em disciplinas e horários. As crianças vivem no absurdo porque habitam estes dois ambientes e nenhum dos dois as permite crescer no mundo real, porque esse mundo real é o da imersão e do crescimento total. As meras instruções não serão suficientes. E outra frase. O caráter de um indivíduo deixou de ser apenas talhado pelo papá e pela mamã. Todo o mundo contribui. Em 2006, a revista Time ainda existia em papel, não sei se se lembram, são desse tempo, elegeu a figura do ano, como fazia todos os anos e como continua a fazer. Há uma analogia muito curiosa, porque em 2006 tinham passado 40 anos sobre a edição deste livro. Quem é que foi a figura do ano para a Time? Tu. Bem-vindo ao teu mundo. A colaboração, a partilha voluntária, o conhecimento coletivo que resulta de tudo isto e a possível inteligência coletiva, que é o próximo passo, são estas questões que levaram na altura a Time a eleger tu e várias plataformas, como o YouTube, a Amazon ou a Wikipedia, como sinónimos, símbolos, ícones deste novo tempo. E são também estas questões que levaram a Fundação a convidar o cofundador da Wikipedia, da Wiki Tribune e do serviço de alojamento gratuito Wikia. Deixo o palco para um homem que, na verdade, introduziu uma nova palavra nas nossas vidas, que é Wiki. Senhoras e senhores, Jimmy Wales. Please welcome. Welcome.
Very good, thank you.
It's
Fantastic.
yours.
Okay, super. Hello. Let's hope this works. Yay. Yay. I'm always happy when it works. I always say I'm not very good with computers, so. Great, well, thank you very much. Very happy to be here tonight. I'm going to see if this works the way it's supposed to. Yes. So I'm here tonight to talk about the future of work, the theme of the conference, but I'm going to put that into the context of communities and tell you a little bit about the history of Wikipedia and how it works, the things I'm working on now, and along the way we'll have some reflections on what are the changes in technology that are driving the future changes in work. And I'm not really an expert on that particular topic, but I hope that some of the things that I tell you about will shed some light on that issue. So the original vision for Wikipedia is for all of us to imagine a world in which every single person on the planet is given free access to the sum of all human knowledge. And that's what we're doing at Wikipedia. And every element of this original vision statement is really important. When we say every single person on the planet, that means that Wikipedia is inherently a global project, inherently multilingual project. When we say free access, we mean that you never have to pay to access Wikipedia, but we actually mean something a little bit more by that. We mean that everything in Wikipedia is freely licensed. So people can copy it, modify it, redistribute modified versions, and you can do all of those things commercially or non-commercially. So really, when people are contributing to Wikipedia, they aren't just contributing to this one charitable project. They're contributing to a storehouse of knowledge that can be reused and repurposed for all kinds of things in education, in devices, and things like this. And then finally, the sum of all human knowledge, which means Wikipedia is a particular type of reference work. It's an encyclopedia. So it isn't textbooks. Wikipedia is not YouTube, so we don't have funny cat videos. I do like a funny cat video, but it doesn't belong in Wikipedia. So Wikipedia tries to be very serious, tries to be very factual, tries to be very neutral, and this is really important to what we're trying to accomplish. So over the last 17 years, our community has written over 40 million different entries in Wikipedia. We're actually getting very close to 50 million. And this is across 270 different languages. So as I say, Wikipedia is, it's inherently multilingual. But when we break that down, when we say we're in 270 languages, that's not really a full picture, because obviously some languages are much bigger than others. So when we look at this, we have 12 languages that have over 1 million entries. We have 50 languages with over 100,000 entries. 55. We have 140 that have at least 10,000 articles. And then there are 253 in total that have over 1,000 entries. So 1,000 entries is a pretty small encyclopedia, but that's where I consider it to be really launched. Normally you'll have an article about the moon or some major things like that. And that's when those communities really come together and they start to think of themselves as a community, and they start to think about how can we get more people working in Wikipedia in our language? How can we get academics involved? How can we get the local newspapers to write about it so that we attract more attention? So it's really exciting actually to see the growth of Wikipedia now in the developing world. It's something that most of us will hardly notice in our daily life. I mean, how many people will notice when the Swahili Wikipedia hits 1 million entries? But I actually think that's one of the more important, fundamental things that we are doing, is giving access to knowledge to everyone in the world, and that's really important to me. We have currently just over 400 million unique visitors every month, and we think that this number is a little bit understated. This is the numbers from ComScore, and ComScore does a great job of measuring traffic, especially in the developed world where there's strong advertising markets. This is their business model. But they don't necessarily measure traffic as well in sub-Saharan Africa and so forth, on mobile and etc. What we know from our internal server logs is that every month we see about 1.3 billion devices. So probably most people here see Wikipedia every month on your phone and a computer, so 2 devices per person. Not really sure what the real number of people is, but it's enormous. It's a huge number of people are accessing Wikipedia every month. And so that means that Wikipedia has become part of the infrastructure of the world. It's something that everyone is using. It's a key internet service that's reused in lots of interesting ways. And so therefore we have a really strong responsibility in the world of Wikipedia to make it as good as it possibly can be. People do rely on us. One of the interesting and unusual things about Wikipedia is that the Wikimedia Foundation, which I set up, is a charity. So we're a nonprofit organization. We're the only nonprofit organization in the top internet sites. We're the 5th most popular internet site, and we're a nonprofit, and we exist solely from donations. So we don't have any advertising in Wikipedia. There's no fees to use it. It's completely free. And the vast majority of the money that supports Wikipedia is the small donors. And this is really quite important to us. Now you can imagine, given that I've devoted the last 17 years of my life to trying to share factual knowledge with the world, how unhappy I am when people talk about that we live in a post-fact world or post-truth world. You can imagine, without being political, what I think of the current president of the United States, who doesn't seem to know anything about facts versus lies. But I'm going to show you a video now where you'll meet some of the Wikipedia volunteers, and they're going to talk a little bit about the work and why they do it and so forth. Yeah, I just sat this on the clicker. Told you I'm not good at computers.
The fact that information spreads quickly means that truth can spread quickly and lies can spread quickly. And Wikipedia, I think, really tries to be that place you go when you've got a moment to reflect, to say, okay, I actually need to learn about this.
Wikipedia is a crowdsourced encyclopedia. You don't have to buy it, and anyone can edit it.
So you have to have your sources, and you have to have your citations. So there's always a way to back up the information. So it's not just out there recklessly or irresponsibly. There's always something, backing it up, so that you can always start back from the original source.
Working with Wikipedia is not only about writing articles, but to understand the whole system of knowledge production. What's our place in the knowledge society?
وجهة نظرنا هنخليها على جنب، وبكده التحديات مش هيبقى فيه تحديات بمعنى تحديات ان احنا نخش في صراع او ندخل في صراع مع اي طرف.
نتعرف من خلالها على التقنيات اللي وراء موقع ويكيبيديا العالمي الشهير.
1, 2, 3.
Ankara'dan selamlar.
I'm from Ukraine.
I'm from Ghana.
I'm from Argentina. From Moscow, Russia.
I come from Egypt.
Hong Kong, Israel,
Berlin, South India.
Ramallah, Palestine.
ما كنت بتوقع انها مؤسسه هلا عملاقه فيها عدد كبير من الفولنتيرز، يعني المتطوعين في الاوبن سورس حوالين العالم. هذا شيء صادم كان لإلي وحبيت الفكره كثير.
We are fundamentally community driven. And this is very different from any other top website. And it matters. Whatever you might think of Wikipedia, whatever problems Wikipedia has, of course we have problems. Nobody ever sits around and says, oh yeah, well, they're beholden to their advertisers. Our community has a very high degree of intellectual independence. No one can come to us and try to lean on us to put false information in Wikipedia or to hide some true information that they don't like, because frankly, the money comes from the general public, and that means we're beholden to the general public. In 100 years, when people look back on this era, these decades around the first of this century, they're going to point at Wikipedia as one of the things that was really good.
We can edit!
And of course, since this is a Wikipedia video, it ends with a ton of footnotes, all the sources for the videos and images and things. We're very geeky. So we think about Wikipedia, and most of us are familiar with our own language version of Wikipedia and maybe one other language or two other languages. But one of the things to think about is how widespread can this revolution be? When I talk about every single person on the planet, obviously there are huge numbers of people who are still not online, they're not connected, but things are changing very quickly. So here's what you know. Here's the normal way people think about the growth of the internet in the developing world, of the growth of mobile. You'll see stories like this. This is a story in The Guardian. Mobiles give Africa's farmers the chance to set out their stalls. This is a story about how subsistence farmers can text across town to find out the price for crops from different buyers, and they can choose the one with the higher price, and they get a better value for their crops because they're more informed about market conditions. This is PBS NewsHour, how cell phones are helping fight malaria. So this is about how people can text to the health authorities and say, oh, we've got a malaria outbreak in our village, and they bring bed nets and medicine and so forth. And the thing about stories like this is that they are true, But I think that these kinds of stories cloud people's minds. They're still thinking of a very old model of what mobile in the developing world really means. And what a lot of people aren't noticing as going on is how quickly full internet access on mobile phones is becoming accessible. So what you probably don't know is that we now have smartphones, decent smartphones for under $20. This is one, I just looked this up the other day, the Wham WS36, and it costs $18.71 US dollars in India, so maybe 15 euros. And what's interesting about this phone is that it is not as good as your latest iPhone or your latest Samsung superphone, but the specifications of this phone are pretty much very, very equal to the original iPhone. So you remember when the first iPhone came out, it really transformed everybody's relationship with the internet. Suddenly the internet was no longer a thing you did on your computer, it was in your pocket in a usable way. This now costs $18, and this is a really amazing thing. Now, they're selling hundreds of thousands of these every month. The market for these is growing. And so what this means is that internet usage is exploding. I'm just going to give you an example of one country. Let's just look at Nigeria. In Nigeria in 2001, 0.1% of the country was online. And over the years it's grown, and then it's really exploded in the last years. And now 51.1% of Nigerians are online. So over half the country is online, and that's up in just 15 years from almost no one. And what's driving that? Why is that happening? Well, it's the drop in price of devices, that's a big part of it, but also the increase in bandwidth. In January of 2002, they had 72 megabits per second for the entire country. So just to give you some perspective, at my home in Florida, I have a decent fiber optic internet connection. I have 150 megabits just at my house, and it's not a special one for me, it's like normal fast internet. Well, you can just imagine, of course, if this is all the bandwidth you have, you can't really have very many people online. They've laid new fiber optic cables, and basically by the end of 2012, 12,000 megabits per second. And actually today, this is no longer a relevant statistic. This is not a number that we need to think about too much anymore. The fiber optic to Nigeria is such that only about half the capacity is currently being used. So it's no longer the bottleneck. The bottleneck is really rolling it out, people on devices, basically people actually at the retail level getting access, which, as I say, is happening very, very quickly. And the next steps there will be fiber to the premises. That is, they've gone from 1 million installations to 2 million installations in the last year. So it's coming very, very quickly. And so that number that we saw on the last slide, 51%, will within just a few years' time be 80, 90, nearly 100%. And this is in just one country. The same story can be repeated all across Africa. Obviously, some places faster than others, depending on the local situation. But this is truly something remarkable. One of the things I kind of joke about is, like, if you look at the historical trend in food prices, food overall has been coming down in price globally for everyone as increases in agricultural technology. There's problems here and there, up and down, but in general, food is getting cheaper in terms of how much people have to work to get food, but not very quickly. Meanwhile, telecommunications prices are dropping absolutely astronomically fast. And so what I joke is, you know those people starving in Africa? Pretty soon they're going to be calling us to complain. They're going to be sending us emails saying, hey, we're really hungry here. Here's a selfie of me being hungry. Why don't you help us out? So it's a joke, really, but it is a remarkable thing to think about, that this idea that we've had in the past of we're in the wealthy, developed part of the world, and there are these poor others, and they live a completely different way, and they're completely disconnected, and the best we can do is try to help them with vaccines and things like that. All of that is still true in some ways, but they are actually joining us on the internet, and I think this is going to have enormous cultural implication. Just as a fun thing, I was in Lagos, Nigeria, and I tested my internet connection at the hotel, and I got 9.33. I asked my friend who was sitting in Manhattan at the same moment, and he got 8.38. So at least in this case, the internet in Nigeria was faster than in Manhattan. This is really a commentary on how bad the internet is in Manhattan. And so I tweeted these numbers, and some young tech hub Nigerian said, "Oh, this is fake. They're tricking you. They're lying about the speeds. The internet's still very terrible here." And they were right. Well, the government wasn't tricking me, but I was in a 5-star hotel very close to the broadband connection. This is not the level of internet that most people in Nigeria have access to, but it's coming. It's to the country, and it's coming fast, and the retail prices are dropping enough that it really matters. And so here's the interesting thing. What are people doing when they come online for the first time? Are they searching for prices for crops? Are they reporting malaria outbreaks? Well, maybe, yeah. People do things like that, and that is a part of what's going on. But what's more interesting is that if you look at the top sites across Africa, it's Google, Facebook, Twitter, Wikipedia, local newspapers. The point is, when people come online and they get online, they're doing all the same things we do. They're sharing photos with friends, they're connecting with people, they're reading the news, they're getting informed about the world. They're doing all of these things in the same way that we do. And so this idea, if you have this funny idea of people, in Africa as being so alien from us, they are not. They're normal people like us. They haven't had access, they're coming online, they're having fun, they're making memes, they're doing all the funny things that people do online. And this is an amazing and wonderful thing. So what you really need to know is that the ongoing march of technology is making real and usable internet access available to tens of millions of people across Africa today. And if you think forward 20 years, and I say 20 years, but I actually think it's more like 10, we're going to have massive connectivity to the real internet for hundreds of millions of people. And these people don't speak English or French. I always like to tell this story. I was in India. This is maybe, I think, about 8 years ago now. And we had a meetup, a bunch of Wikipedia volunteers all sitting around the table. And basically, we went around the table and people wrote on a piece of paper what their mother tongue was, the home language. And because we were in India, by the time the paper made it around the table, we had 8 different languages around the table. So that was interesting, and we were all having fun. Of course, we're speaking English because this is what you do. Afterwards, one of the young men came up to me and said, I don't know why you care so much about all these local languages, because everyone in India who has a computer can read English. So what's the point of the local languages? Well, he was wrong then, but he's really wrong now. The technology is getting into the hands of people who don't speak English, they don't speak French, they don't speak, I should mention, Portuguese, another language in Africa. And so people really do need information in their mother tongue, and this is incredibly important. One of the ways I get people to think about that is, imagine if you were trying to study quantum physics. Okay, so it's already a very complicated, very conceptually challenging topic, and now imagine that you had to study it in Chinese. So now you've got a real problem, because even if you can learn to read Chinese and you can struggle through, you're still trying to understand very advanced things in a different language. People need educational materials in their mother tongue to really be able to flourish and to prosper in it. So this is why I'm so passionate about the growth of Wikipedia across the developing world. Now, let me just now show you another video, because one of the things that we see is that while the technology is coming down, the cost of data is still a burden in many parts of the world. So people have a cheap smartphone, but the data is still very expensive. And so this is a video made by, well, we made the video, but we didn't start this. There were a bunch of teenagers in South Africa who were asking their mobile phone providers. They did an open letter on the internet and a petition to get free access, so access to Wikipedia with no data charges. So they wrote this letter, and then this is them reading out their letter.
Hi, this is a letter which me and my classmate wrote to access to Wikipedia for free. It goes as follows.
Open letter to Celsi, MTN, Vodacom, and ATA.
We are learners in grade 12 at Silinjong High School, Joslovo Park, Milnerton, Cape Town.
We recently heard that in some other African countries like Kenya and Uganda,
cell phone providers are offering their customers free access to Wikipedia.
We think this is a wonderful idea and would really like to encourage you also to make the same offer here in South Africa.
Our school does not have a library.
90% of us have cell phones, but it is expensive for us to buy airtime.
So if we could get free access to Wikipedia,
it will make a huge difference to us.
Normally, when we do research, Wikipedia is one of the best sites,
and there is information on just about every topic.
Think of the boost that it will give us as students and to the whole education system of South Africa.
Our education system needs help, and having access to Wikipedia would make a very positive difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And goes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is an open letter to the youth of South Africa and the student of Sinenjongo High School in Cape Town.
You recently shared a video asking South Africa's cellular networks to give their customers free access to Wikipedia.
We think this is a wonderful idea.
We know that many school children in this country don't have access to research material, which can make excelling at school so much more difficult.
That's why MTN is proud to be the first South African cellular network to make Wikipedia free.
So this is this program we have called Wikipedia Zero is all about convincing mobile carriers to offer access to Wikipedia with no data charges. And it's been very successful, although we're beginning to wind it down now because, as it turns out, as I've shown you, the amount of bandwidth is going up substantially in most of the developing world. So in many of the countries where we first offered this, it's become kind of irrelevant because Wikipedia, the amount of bandwidth used for Wikipedia, it's mostly text and images, is so much lower than the bandwidth used for YouTube or things like that people do, that it actually, for some places, it's no longer necessary. And that's, again, the changing economics mean that more and more people are getting online. They don't really require this kind of subsidy anymore. So now I'm going to connect all this a little bit to the future of work. So what I've really been trying to emphasize tonight and really kind of show you is how I see that we're seeing the rise of what I would call the knowledge middle class globally. So all around the world, people are getting access to information, access to knowledge, access to educational materials. This isn't just Wikipedia, it's actually access to news, access to headlines, access to educational courses online, free courses from people like Khan Academy and all the great projects like that. And so what does this mean? It means a lot of jobs are going to transform dramatically. The rise of technology means this. And so in many places, we're going to find new competition. So people in Africa, as they become more knowledgeable, they will become more productive. There'll be new brands and new kind of manufacturing going on there. And that's going to have a huge impact on any business anywhere in the world. You can't assume any longer that any kind of high-tech manufacturing will only be found in certain developed countries. There are going to be more countries who are able to do that kind of thing. And we also should think about how work will transform with the rise of more and more intelligent machines. So I'm not talking about full AI, that's a whole other world and a whole other concept. But even in the meantime, before we get to full AI, there are going to be huge impacts. And one of the ones that I think is coming faster than most people realize, although I've been saying that for a few years, and I think people are starting to realize it now. Oh dear, my microphone is dying. Okay, if you could be, let's just have that ready, just in case. So driverless cars is one that I think is really important to think through. So we see the technology. I took a ride in a Google driverless car about 2 years ago. It was already impressive then. It's improved a lot now. There's still a lot to figure out, but that technology is coming, and it's coming very quickly. And it's going to be a huge positive impact on the world because the truth is humans are terrible drivers. I mean, it's an outrageous thing. Like, if you ask yourself, what are humans really good at? And driving, requiring intense concentration in a life or death situation all the time, is what we're the worst at. We get distracted, the kids are screaming, whatever, we're eating, people are idiots. Texting, people should not be allowed to drive. It's a really bad idea, and I love driving. So driverless cars are coming, but they're going to come first, not necessarily full driverless cars in the cities that you call your car and it comes to get you, although that will happen. But the first step of this that I think is worth really thinking about is long-distance truck driving. So in the US, there's about 2 million people whose job is long-distance truck driving. And this is on the interstate highway system, which if you've ever seen it or you've been to the US, it's really good. Similar highway systems all across Europe. So it's very easy to drive on the interstate highway system, and so it's much easier to imagine technology where a human does the difficult driving in the city down to the factory and so on, and then they get to the edge of the city and they get out and they push the button and the car drives to all the way across the country, and then somebody meets it there. I mean, the truck drives, and somebody meets it there and drives it into the grocery store to unload the groceries or whatever it might be. And those jobs are currently held by people who may not have a lot of other skills. They know how to drive a big rig truck, and that is an important skill. And those jobs have traditionally been unionized, and they've been reasonably good pay. It's not the greatest job in the world, but it's an all right job, and people can make a living doing it. And those jobs are going to go away very, very quickly. And it's the kind of thing, when you see the cost curves cross, that transition is going to happen almost overnight, 5 years. So I don't mean it's going to happen 5 years from now. I mean, once the technology is cost competitive and it's cheaper and safer to let a computer drive the truck across the country, then within 5 years from that point, almost all trucks will go that way, because it only makes economic sense, it makes safety sense, it's going to happen, which means over a very short time horizon, we're suddenly going to have 2 million angry, mostly men, out of work. And this is a problem. And I think that governments and institutions should be thinking now, how are we going to deal with these very rapid transitions caused by technology? There is no way around it. This technology will come, and it is a good thing for the world, but always when we have technological transformation, the disruption can be quite difficult on people. I think I'm going to give up on this one. It's just not working. Okay. So this is something to think about, and what does this mean for the broader society? I mean, one of the things that you should always think about with changes in technology is not just the first order impact. So the first order impact of driverless vehicles is obviously on the trucking industry. Next you can think about taxi cab drivers, any kind of professional driver. You can think about the social changes though. You can think about what's beyond that. Suddenly will you send your children to school? You just put them in the car in the morning and the car drives them to school. And then the school has to change their system because they're going to meet the children at the cars, et cetera, et cetera. There are all kinds of social changes and economic changes that are the second order impacts that are really, really hard to think about. They'll seem obvious to everyone 10 years after they've happened, in the same way that Facebook seems obvious to us now, but Facebook was in no way obvious before it was invented. And I think those are the kinds of changes that are really going to dramatically impact all of our lives, hopefully and mostly for the better, but I think there's going to be some rough transitions. So one of the things that I think a lot about, and I'm going to talk in a minute about Wiki Tribune, my new project, but I think, what is the future of work for journalists? This is one example. So journalists are not going to be replaced by AI. That isn't going to happen. This is one of the highest human things, is to look at the world and analyze it and write things. You have to understand your audience, et cetera, et cetera. But even here, where it's a very human task, we see all these disruptions. So we see that the industry has suffered very badly. The financial pressures on journalism as a profession have been enormous over the past years. The number of working journalists has declined substantially. Local journalism is nearly destroyed in many parts of the world. And this is causing all kinds of problems. I mean, we are seeing the impacts of this with the rise of anger, the rise of people who don't trust the information they're receiving, and one of the reasons is they're not connected to the media in the same way they used to be. And the quality of information has declined. We all sense this. We know that even though the great journalistic institutions, the BBC, the New York Times, etc., your classic good old-fashioned newspapers, still, for the most part, are fighting the good fight and doing quality work, but they're doing so on very difficult budgets. And at the same time, they're competing with all this flood of very low-quality information, clickbait headlines. We've all seen it. How many of you have been guilty of clicking on the link that says, "You won't believe what this child star looks like now"? and then after about 10 minutes of clicking through because you want to find out now, you hate yourself. Why am I doing this? I was gonna learn something this morning. I have a secret, by the way. If you ever see, you won't believe what this child star looks like now. Don't click through 100 pages trying to find out. Just go to Google and type such and such person 2018. There's a picture. Now you know. It's very fast. It's the way to resist the temptation. And so the question I have is, okay, we've got this huge problem. What can we do to help? What are some of the innovations that we need? What are some ways that we might be able to think of new ways of organizing journalism? And so I've got a new project that I'm working on called Wiki Tribune. I'm very excited about it. I'm spending almost all of my time on it. And the idea here is pretty much what it says in the title. So Tribune, as in that's a traditional name for a newspaper, and Wiki meaning the Wiki community. And so it's trying to merge two things. One, we have paid professional journalists who we hire and pay in a very normal way. But we also have community members who work with the journalists side by side. And so what we're trying to figure out as this pilot project is what are the things that the community can do best and what are the things that the journalists can do best. So most journalists have a pretty dim view of what the community can do because the facts of reality have taught them, okay, I wrote my wonderful and genius and brilliant article and we got it posted on the website, and down at the bottom in the comment box, the worst people in humanity are yelling at each other and yelling at me. This is useless. How can these idiots possibly help? But if they step back and say, okay, but hold on, look, there's this whole other world, the world of Wikipedia where, okay, Wikipedia is not perfect, but you saw these people. They're wonderful people and they're trying really hard to get it right and they have a lot to contribute. But there's a lot they can't do. We've seen a lot of projects of citizen journalism, interesting stuff, but they never really develop into full-blown news service. And I think a hybrid is the answer. So that's what I'm working on. The idea here is that the ideal news service should be radical. It should stop being safe. Most news sites haven't evolved very much. I mean, there have been some innovations, but in general, we have the same model for the last 15 years. Here's the news article, here's the comment box. That's pretty much it. There are some interesting experiments, but I think we need to be much more radical. We need to totally rethink the whole process. And you've seen inside Wikipedia, we're passionate about facts, but what's going on outside Wikipedia? What has happened in the world of journalism and why? So the first thing to note is that the advertising-only business model has been incredibly destructive for journalism. And this is true for some new reasons. So in the old days, when people worried about advertising as a funding model for journalism, the main concern that people had was undue corporate influence on the news. In other words, the fear was, would the New York Times really be able to write a negative article about General Motors if General Motors is a major advertiser? Well, for me, I think that was mostly okay. It was obviously something to worry about. It wasn't a complete disaster. Quality newspapers knew that to maintain their brand image, to maintain the trust of their readers, they had to write even about some of their advertisers when they had to. There was a little reluctance, but they did the job. And I think that was okay. Today, the ads-only business model is incredibly destructive for a completely new reason that never existed in the world of print. And this is the rise of programmatic advertising, which is a great thing. So just to explain what that means, it doesn't matter where I go on the internet. I go all over the internet. I'm looking at all kinds of websites, and everywhere I go, I see the same advertisements. I think this is true for most people. For me, I see ads for boats. I like boats. I read boat magazines, I go to boat websites, I click on ads for boats I can't afford, so it's like boat porn, but I click, I go there. And the algorithms have figured this out, and so they show me ads for boats wherever I go, which means that I can be on The Guardian, I can be on the Financial Times, or I can be on Reddit, a message board, I can be on some clickbait headline, I can be on the Daily Mail. No matter where I go, I see the same ads, which means that all of that content is competing with each other in an equal way. Obviously, those advertisers have no influence over the editorial because, generally speaking, probably The Guardian, for example, has no idea that there are boat ads on their site. The boats are targeted at me. So that problem has gone away, but what has happened is now there's this incentive to get as many clicks as possible because you get paid the same whether you've got quality journalism or just clicks because you're targeting that person. So in the old days, if you were a boat manufacturer, you would say, okay, we need to find our customers. Who buys boats? And they would look at the demographics and they would say, we need to find someone who's affluent, has a little bit of gray in their beard, 50 years old, having a midlife crisis. They want to get the boat they always dreamed of. They're ready to buy a boat. Let's advertise. Where are we going to find them? Well, they read the Wall Street Journal, they read the Guardian, they read the FT, and so on. Now they skip that step. They don't care where you are. They find you online. And so that means that the news has this really impossible task of competing with clickbait headlines and nonsense. And that's really, really destructive to journalism. A lot of news outlets are understanding that they want to keep doing quality journalism, but if you pay a senior reporter for 3 weeks to pursue a story, and you pay a very funny, clever millennial intern to write a viral article, you're going to make the same amount of money. And you can hire the young kid for cheap, and the journalist costs a lot of money. As a business decision, there is a real temptation to go for clickbaity headlines. And you see it, even some of the best outlets kind of succumb to this from time to time. But the worst outlets, they have no resistance because they don't actually care about journalism at all. So this clickbait phenomenon is a part of what's happened. It's designing headlines just to get people to do things. Sometimes people ask me, why don't you have advertising in Wikipedia? Wouldn't that be a good funding model? And then I say, well, would you really want, this is what Wikipedia looks like now, would you really want Wikipedia to look like this? Because that's what you get. On this, the ones at the bottom, those are all advertisements. The ones on the right are other stories designed to keep you clicking. This is, I've taken this from the Mail Online website. I don't know anything about the details, but apparently the way to keep people clicking on a website is to put bikinis. Seems to be what works. So in any event, nobody wants this for Wikipedia. This is ridiculous. But what happens is, what does it mean for journalism? So let me show you this photo. I think this is a beautiful photograph. I think it's a really interesting photo. So this is a billboard in Beijing on a very smoggy day. And it's showing a sunrise. So it's, you know, the orange and the gray. It's really a great contrast. It's a beautiful photo. Here's the story in the Mail Online. China starts televising the sunrise on giant TV screens because Beijing is so clouded in smog. So it's also a great story, right? The photo tells the story, and you read the story, and you're amazed. And of course, the only problem with this great story is that it's completely false. It's been completely debunked by other websites. So, and this last headline of one of the debunkings says it best: Westerners are so convinced China is a dystopian hellscape, they'll share anything which confirms it. So what they're doing is they're appealing to existing prejudices. For the Mail, they have a very much a pro-Brexit, Little England kind of mentality. They hate foreigners and so on. And so for them, although the story itself is not political, it definitely fits their political agenda, which is to show you how horrible the rest of the world is, how horrible it would be to be in China, that Chinese people are oppressed and so on, and it's completely terrible there. And so this is a problem. This is a real problem. I actually did some research because one of the things that I was puzzled by is because the story's byline is James Nye and Associated Press reporter. Associated Press is a perfectly respectable. It's the main press agency in the U.S. They distribute news to all kinds of outlets. They're very factual. They're very neutral. They're good quality. And so I thought, well, that's odd because the Associated Press wouldn't just make up a story. I did some Googling, like a professor who suspects plagiarism. I cut and pasted a few things into Google, and I found the original AP story. The original AP story just said there's really high smog in Beijing this week, and the weather patterns are causing it to hang around, and next week wind is expected to come to clear. A very boring, kind of typical smog story. And the Mail just made up this TV screen thing. As it turns out, this billboard is an advertising billboard. It runs different ads all day, all night. This is a travel advertisement, basically saying, you know, come to the islands for your holiday. So it's very different from what it was portrayed as. And they lied. It's still online. It's been online for a few years now. It's shared a lot of times. The truth is, the Mail, they're very happy to tell you what a great newspaper they are. And they're very happy to tell you that they almost never lose a lawsuit for libel. And in my personal experience, if they write something wrong and negative about you and you complain, they'll take it down. They're very good about taking things down if they think you could sue them and win. But in this story, there's no one to sue. There's no one is being libeled here. It's a general slur against China. It's just false information. And so, you know, this is eating away at the heart of democracy. People don't believe the news anymore because they've seen so much nonsense out there. And I think this is a huge problem. So Wiki Tribune is a completely new organization. I decided to start it separately from Wikimedia Foundation and Wikipedia, simply because at the Wikimedia Foundation and Wikipedia, it's a large organization, can be quite bureaucratic. We do community consultations for everything, and I need to be entrepreneurial. I need to make fast changes if I see something needs changing. So in fact, just a couple months ago, we did a total redesign of the site and just did it and rolled it out immediately because I saw a way to make activity higher on the site. And we have paid professional journalists, and they work side by side as equals with the community. So the community is not below the journalists. They work with that, and they can equally well start stories, participate. They get the journalists to help them when they have something that's harder for them to do, like go get an interview and do things like that. We've launched with no ads and no paywall. So I've been joking, a series of bad business decisions, but that's how I've built my career so far. Well, we'll see. wikitribune.com. Come and check it out. Actually, very, very soon we'll be launching in Spanish. So that's the second language. And you'll see that soon. We'll be announcing that. So this is what it looks like. As you can see, every story, you can just click edit and change it. Edit, edit, edit. The orange means it's a draft, which means that the more senior people haven't approved it. And the green ones mean that they've been improved and somebody's reviewed it and checked it. And as you can see, basically it just looks like a normal news site, but up there in the upper right-hand corner is the edit button. So you can click edit and change and participate. And we show the history, every change that's been made for that kind of transparency. So it's very much a wiki, which is sort of what I like to do. It's still a pilot project. We're small. We've only got about 10 journalists, but we're doing stories every day, and we're exploring, experimenting. The community's innovating, doing new kinds of fact-checking, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'm having lots of fun. So thank you. Now, we have a few minutes left, and I understand this is where we can test my sporting abilities, because there's a microphone that I'm supposed to throw at you, but I don't know where it's gone. Here it comes. Oh, they're preparing it. So get your questions ready. Here we go. Okay, so now I'm going to throw it. So you can raise your hand. Who wants to ask a question? Oh, wow. Guy way in the back. Pardon? I have to give it back to you? Oh, 2 hands. These are my coaches. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I think I killed someone. Okay, hello. It's not turned on, guys. Just think how cool the world is going to be when technology actually works.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for your presentation. I heard you were saying that anybody can edit the articles in Wikipedia. What about the articles which are locked?
So what we do at Wikipedia, almost, I would say 99+% of the entries are completely open for editing, and you don't even have to log in. You just click edit and you make a change. It goes to a recent changes page or watch list, and people can review it. But it's really open and really live. But obviously for certain entries, that's problematic. So we have 2 levels of locking. One is what we call semi-protection. So semi-protection means you have to have an account for 4 days, and you have to make 10 edits without getting yourself banned before you can edit. So an example of an article that would be always semi-protected would be Donald Trump. That if you unlock it completely, in about 5 minutes' time, somebody's just going to write curse words all over it and save it, and it's a high-profile article. That wouldn't be good for Wikipedia, so we semi-protect that. And that some articles can stay in a semi-protected state for years at a time. I think almost all recent US presidents will be semi-protected because there's always somebody who wants to sort of do something stupid on a popular article. Then the next level of protection is full protection. Full protection is only rarely applied and only temporarily. So what we do full protection is whenever an entry, a big fight has broken out, or there's an off-site campaign to say, let's go in and push our agenda in Wikipedia, then we'll full protect it, normally for just a couple of days. Sometimes it has to go on a little longer. And the idea there is to say, look, Wikipedia is not a battleground. That's not what you're supposed to do here. We have to protect certain things. But the principle is always, the talk page is always open, and the principle is always that we need to be open to different perspectives. Thoughtful, kind people come in and say, hey, you've got this wrong, let's talk about it, da-da-da-da. So it's incredibly open, but yeah, we have to be practical. One of the things that I learned in my career is to do it that way around. So in the pre-Wikipedia days, I had a project called Newpedia, which took the opposite approach, which was basically everything was locked down, and we thought about maybe opening up a few things. The same thing at Wiki Tribune. When we first opened, frankly, it was very hard to participate. People could only submit suggestions and so on. And I suddenly realized this isn't really a wiki. Everything is locked down. People aren't participating because we're not really letting them. So my philosophy is always keep everything as open as you possibly can, as open until you're slightly cringing. And then you have to lock a few things down just because of vandalism and people being stupid, but you need to be as open as possible. So that's our approach. Okay? Next question? Don't know. I don't know if you're supposed to throw it back to me and we can watch me make a spectacle of myself. Anyone? I didn't know Portuguese people were so shy. Okay, he's throwing it further back. Yes.
So have you noticed any trend, for example, now that bots are increasingly influencing all sorts of things in the internet? So have you noticed in the business of Wikipedia any kind of influence over your articles?
No, we haven't. And the reason, there are a lot of different reasons for it. So one of the things about Wikipedia is there are almost no algorithms at all. Everything in Wikipedia is humans making decisions. And so having bots, like one of the things you would do with a bot, so a classic type of attack on Twitter would be to have a whole bot army of 40,000 accounts. And the idea is not that the bots engage in intelligent conversation with people. They're not able to do that. But what the bots do is they retweet something, or they amplify something, or they repeat a certain word to trigger Twitter's trending topics algorithm so that whatever message they want to get out, they manipulate Twitter into promoting that message. And that doesn't work at Wikipedia. We don't have any algorithms like that. We only have human beings. In terms of people coming to Wikipedia with an agenda to try to push a certain perspective, that's really, really hard to do. Of course, anyone can do it. Anyone here can go on to Wikipedia and decide that you really hate Donald Trump, or you really hate Hillary Clinton, or whatever it is, and you're going to go and you're just going to make sure the article is negative about them. But you won't get very far because the community will say, hey, come on, this isn't a blog, this is, we're trying to be neutral, you're not doing quality work, and eventually you'll get banned if you keep it up. So it's very hard to game a system that doesn't have algorithms. So just one more little example, voting. So at Wikipedia, we do some, you might call it voting, but we actually call it not voting. We actually use an exclamation mark vote, meaning not vote in computer language. And what this is, oftentimes, so here's an example. Some group offsite will say, we really hate this person, let's get their Wikipedia entry deleted. So they come to Wikipedia and they nominate for deletion, and then they all pile in, and we have 50 votes in a row, voting to delete, and we can tell they're all brand new accounts, and they all give reasons like, he's stupid. Okay. There are a lot of stupid people in Wikipedia who have articles, so that's not really a reason. And so then you'll have a few long-standing trusted community members who will give an actual policy-based reason to say, right, a lot of people hate him, and there's this off-site campaign, but this is a notable person. They've been covered in 50 different newspapers. They have an historical importance. We need to keep the article. And then we keep the article. And the admins who come in to decide at the end, they don't have to go purely by a numeric vote count. What they have to do is go by the vote count, but then make a judgment call to say, okay, there were 50 people who gave really bad reasons and 10 people who gave good reasons. We're going to go with the 10 people because that's really the principles of Wikipedia. If we had a system, so sometimes people have suggested, why don't you automate that voting system? So instead of people having to come and judge and close the vote, why don't you just automatically say, this is up for vote, thumbs up, thumbs down. If it gets enough thumbs down, it's automatically deleted. Well, then bots come. And so I think a lot of the technology that a lot of websites use, because they don't really have a community of volunteers, they don't have people to actually run things. It's very expensive for Facebook to hire people to make judgment calls, so they much prefer to do it algorithmically, but then algorithms can be gamed by other algorithms, and so that's a problem. So in general, we haven't seen much of that kind of activity. Obviously, we always have to keep an eye out for it, and I won't say that there's never been any sort of spy agency coming on Wikipedia to do something. I do have a funny story about that, though. So some years ago, so when you edit Wikipedia, if you don't log in, then it shows your IP address. And so this cool tech guy wrote a program to analyze all of those IP addresses to see where edit's coming from. And so the news, he published the study. It was really interesting. And one of the big headlines everywhere was, CIA caught editing Wikipedia. And everybody's like, oh my God, the CIA is editing Wikipedia. So I was like, oh yeah, this is terrible. What's going on? I go and look, and basically the real scandal is a lot of CIA agents are goofing off at work, and they're editing TV shows, right? It's like, you shouldn't be doing that from Langley, Virginia at the office, writing about the Brady Bunch, right? This is just not it. So as it turned out, most of that kind of editing didn't end up being ideological. It's just people goofing off at work. So I thought that was a funny story. Okay, we're out of time, but let's do one more question. They won't kick us out yet. Over here, yes, please. Here it comes. Nice. He killed 2 people, so he's got me beat. And he broke the mic.
Yeah, was out. So thank you so much for the inspirational talk. Me and my colleague here were just a band of 2 nobodies who believe Wikipedia is belonging to education. So we have been discussing Wikipedia as a research object and also as an open educational resource. And so we were wondering, how can we prevent new bytes to be welcomed by the techie guys? So
yes. So
don't buy the newbies.
Don't buy the newbies.
How can we? Because sometimes it's frustrating to have people contributing, and then things are deleted, and you cannot understand how it's deleted.
Yeah.
So,
this is a great question. It's a great topic. So basically, one of the things that we talk about a fair amount is, as you said, the techie guys, right? So we know that there's an imbalance in Wikipedia. Something like 80 to 85% of the contributors are male, and we consider this to be a problem. And so we ask ourselves, why is that a problem? I mean, not why is it a problem, it's an obvious problem. Actually, I can say why it's a problem is it actually causes uneven coverage and bias in the content. Not bias in the sense of that Wikipedia is sort of blatantly sexist, it's just 27-year-old tech geek men have a different set of interests than, even I'm a parent, right? And I will tell you that our articles on early childhood development are pretty bad because a lot of young male single tech geeks who don't have children aren't that interested. It's not that they hate the topic, they just don't know anything or they don't really care. So we want to have a diversity of contributors. At the same time, we're now a community that's been around for 17 years, which means that we have a lot of jargon. We have a lot of rules, we have a lot of traditions that are built up, and that can be a pretty heavy thing for people to learn. We have things like don't bite the newbies. That's an important principle of Wikipedia. We have a principle of ignore all rules, which means if someone comes to Wikipedia and they're obviously trying to do something good and productive, but they're not quite doing it the right way, you don't ban them and you don't yell at them, you try to help them. So obviously, but we're human beings, and so human beings don't always do those things in the right way. And it is a common thing that people who are new to Wikipedia, particularly if they're not from kind of a tech geek male culture, they find it difficult. So if teachers assign a project to students saying, I want you to create a Wikipedia entry, often they create entries that actually aren't very good and they don't meet the policies of Wikipedia. And instead of us being like, hey, great, welcome, thank you, here, we can help you, and so on, instead people are like, more kids on Wikipedia, more. By kids, I mean, it could be university students, and then they tend to not be as nice as they should be. So we try to work within the community to say, don't bite the newbies, let's be friendly and open. I think we partly succeed. Certainly the kind of abusive behavior that is routine on a place like Twitter or a message board like Reddit is just, it's not really the issue in Wikipedia. People can be a bit gruff at times and so on, but people aren't abusing other people much. Obviously, human beings, it happens, but people get blocked for that. And so I think my advice to people who are coming to Wikipedia with newbies to try to get them involved is, first of all, take it slowly, work them through some of the policies, ask them to first make a small edit. Instead of their first task to be writing a brand new entry from scratch, which is very hard to do in a language like Portuguese, for example, which is already huge. So anything you're going to choose is going to be fairly obscure. It's kind of hard to write a full entry from scratch. So instead, they should start by just making one edit, making some change, make an improvement to Wikipedia. The other thing you could do is approach the community beforehand and say, hey, I've got a bunch of students and we want to find a project to do. There's some really great groups within Wikipedia. One of my favorite is Women in Red. I don't know if it exists in Portuguese, but probably. But in English, Women in Red, basically, okay, in Wikipedia, if you link to something, it's a blue link, of course. But if that something you link to doesn't already have an article, then it's a red link. And so what we say is, like, a lot of notable women in history, scientists and so on, don't have entries in Wikipedia. And so the group Women in Red is encouraging people to turn those red links blue. And they're lovely people. And so you can approach them and say, hey, I've got these students, we want to do a project, can you give us a handful of entries that you know are desired and wanted, and we'll have the students kind of work on those. And they should chip in and help you out and be very friendly. But we're humans, and it's an open, democratic community, so don't despair if you run into a jerk. It happens sometimes. But if you do run into a jerk, there's usually a nice person around to tell the jerk to behave, hopefully. So that's my advice. Okay, I'm over time. Please wrap up. It says time's up. So I'm going to get kicked out of here. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. In fact, I have one more question, may I? I'm a journalist myself, so I was very, please.
Yes.
I was very touched by what you said in your presentation. I was moving around, so I'm not sure if you mentioned it. How do you think that media outlets, media organizations, and journalists will be paid off? How do you think how to get the money if the ad-only business model is destructive and in ruins? In fact.
So I think one of the things that I'm most optimistic about, sort of the best news that I've heard in a long time, and this is very abstract, is that the New York Times digital subscriptions have gone from 1 million to 3 million in just a few years' time. And I don't think that's because they finally figured out the exact tweak of the paywall. I think it's a fundamental understanding by the public that if you want news that represents you, you have to pay for it. Because if it's driven by the advertisers, you just get clickbait headlines and so on. And I think that we're seeing a willingness by the public to say, we will pay. And also,
we need news. We need good news.
And,
professional
exactly.
news.
And a lot of elements to that are payment mechanisms have become a lot easier, so the app model means one-click purchase. I give the example of magazines. I would say there was a period of time when I hardly bought any magazines. Maybe occasionally at a newsstand I see something, I buy it. I didn't subscribe to any magazines, and now I subscribe to about 8 magazines, 6 of them about boats. And I'm paying for that content, and I do it partly because on my phone I have Kindle, and it's just one click, and so I say, oh, I've read all my magazines, maybe there's another one, and I buy it and I subscribe. So people are willing to pay, but we need to make mechanisms for them to do it. The fear and the concern that I will raise is for the New York Times in particular. They've done very, very well since Donald Trump was elected.
I know.
And I say what you will about the man, he sells a lot of newspapers. And there is a Trump effect. In fact, actually, Wikipedia donations skyrocketed the day after the election because people were, like, there's this real feeling that he represents, well, he's the opposite of me in every regard. And you know, people think, no, we need facts first. It's not even about his policies, it's the destruction of the idea of truth is really upsetting to people. And so I think people are more willing to pay. Don't know if it's the only answer, but it's got to be part of the answer.
No, it's a very good answer. Thank you very much, Jimmy Wells. Once again, thank you very much. Thank you. You can sit here, I think. You can go this way. Muito obrigado. Bom, hoje não vos vamos maçar muito mais, porque, enfim, a promessa é de que o trabalho dá muito que pensar, e pensar às vezes também dá muito trabalho, é verdade, mas trabalho é trabalho e conhaque é conhaque, portanto, estamos praticamente a acabar os trabalhos por hoje, mas vai haver aqui um pequeno intervalo agora, só para se instalarem os músicos que prepararam um concerto especial esta noite para todos os presentes. O concerto chama-se Labutar, é com o fadista Ricardo Ribeiro, os guitarristas Bernardo Saldanha e José Manuel Neto, o pianista João Paulo Esteves da Silva e a filha, que também é cantora, que é Nazaré Esteves da Silva. Logo a seguir vai haver uma edição especial do Governo Sombra, um Conselho de Ministros extraordinário, aqui neste palco, em direto para a TV24. É uma espécie de turno da noite, onde o Ricardo Araújo Pereira, o Carlos Vaz Marques, o Pedro Mexia e o João Miguel Tavares fazem o que não podem para pôr o país na linha. Nós voltamos a ver-nos amanhã à hora de picar o ponto, se não se importam, está bem? Boa noite, muito obrigado.